All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. Again, we go through everything direct to seller marketing. And today we have Wes Steimel from Kansas City on the call. And he's a wholesale fix and flipper. He's got some rentals, and he really focuses on direct to seller marketing. So we're going to go through his business, understand how he got started, and how he built his company through direct to seller marketing to help everybody listening to the call. So with that, thanks so much, Wes, for jumping on the call. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me, Justin.
Great. So, as always, let's go through and just give us a background of like where you started, why you even got into the crazy world of real estate, and what was the goal, when did you start, and kind of how that progressed to today.
Sure. Um, Much like a lot of people, I think I found my way into real estate through Bigger Pockets. Stumbled on the podcast probably 2015-ish.
Yeah.
And the idea then, I was working a W-2, is the whole passive income, freedom through cash flow, be able to replace your income, your W-2 income with cash flow. And so started buying rentals. I think the first one we bought was in 2017, going the traditional route, 25 to 30% down. With that, you'd buy yourself $150 to $200 worth of cash flow per month. And you start doing the math on that and realize it's going to take you a lot of time and a whole lot of capital to be able to replace that income. So it was becoming harder and harder to find deals. So it got to the point where I wanted to be able to source my own deals. And that's when I started exploring the direct to seller marketing through different channels. Um, and eventually, we still buy rentals. They're harder just because of the appreciation, the price points now, and the interest rates to get anything to cash flow. So we're still doing direct to seller marketing. We'll buy them and hold them if they make sense. But just in this current environment, fix and flip and wholesale seems to be the best exit for most of these deals that we're finding.
Yeah, yeah, good. So, how did you get started in direct to seller? Like, did you start right off the bat with direct to seller marketing, or did you jump on to like the MLS and start looking at on market properties and then shift?
Yeah, so the very first property we bought, rental, I actually bought it from a guy that was Fizbo on Craigslist. But I was searching all sorts of things. That was really, I think, before Facebook Marketplace even. So it was like Craigslist and the MLS were really the places that you looked for properties. Probably got a little bit of a deal going Fizbo that route, but everything else we bought from the MLS. Started engaging with local wholesalers to try to find other deals, but again, because I wasn't buying multiple properties per year at that time,
Hmm.
anything a wholesaler showed me, he'd already showed to all of his other buyers. And, it wasn't really any better of a deal than I could find on the MLS.
Yeah.
And I had a lot less flexibility as a buyer at that point. Typically those are cash deals, less inspection contingencies, all that. And you're not really getting it at a deep discount. So that's when we decided to go direct to seller. So I started, I did some like handwriting stuff to really small niche lists, in the evenings, and it'd send out, 150 of them a month. And you never, direct mail is a numbers game, and 150 is such a small sample to really get any kind of response rate unless you're super, super, super targeted. It may take you 6, 7 months of that before you get one or two responses, and then you've got to convert from there. So started with text messaging,
Hmm.
was my first like bulk direct to seller marketing attempt. We did do some deals from that. I just didn't like that marketing channel because it was basically turned me into a call center. We'd get all these very unmotivated leads in that
Yeah.
then I'd have to work further down through the funnel. So it was great in getting me practice and getting on the phone with people who may or may not want to talk to you. But I found that the the cost per lead was lower than direct mail, but at the bottom of the funnel, the cost per deal was tended to be higher, and it was a whole lot more work in between getting them into the funnel and out the bottom. So I eventually turned off the. I had added cold calling as well, and it was a very similar thing.
Hmm.
Um, they were slightly more motivated than say a texting lead, but again, it was harder to get them converted. And I started listening to a podcast called Collecting Keys, uh, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. and they really promoted direct mail for the simple fact that it's scalable, and you tended to have warmer leads that reached out. These folks are reaching out to you. They're getting a piece of mail. They're taking the step to call you. You still do get some tire kickers, but by and large, you have a lot warmer lead at that point. And
Yeah.
so that's why I shut off both texting and cold calling and moved over just to direct mail. And that would have been in November of 22 when I did that.
Okay. Yeah, that's really funny because I started the same way. I started mailing all of my stuff. My wife and I would be handwriting all the letters and all that stuff. I think our goal was like 500 a week. I think we got it up to. We got a really good process going. And until I built some capital that I could actually go out and have somebody else fulfill the direct mail for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I could just focus on some other things. So that's cool. So you started a bunch of different marketing types or channels, and found that direct mail was probably the most optimal for you and what you
Mm-hmm.
were looking to do, and not have yourself like be the kind of call center and whatnot. So how did like you got started? You tried all these options, and then like fast forward to today. How has that changed? And are you guys still doing direct mail? Is that your primary marketing channel? Have you built it out? Like, talk to us a little bit about that and the process of how you market, like what lists you market to and all that.
Sure. Yeah. So today, direct mail is still the marketing channel that we utilize. Um, when we began in November of 22, it was slow. It was a slow time of year. You just think about what's going on. You've got Thanksgiving, and then the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, all that, and it's winter. Generally, unless people have a timeline that they need to move in that period, they may just wait till it's nicer out. I know you guys up in the Northeast don't have the most pleasant winters. We don't here in Kansas City either. So there's some seasonality to this business. So it took me from November of 22 until April of 23 before I got my first direct mail deal.
Okay.
And so there was some significant capital outlay that happened in doing that, but I had committed that I was going to put, X amount of dollars into my direct mail marketing each month for 6 months and see what happened. And so,
Yeah, how did you overcome that? Because that's a huge roadblock for most people. Is like, they start marketing or mailing, and month one goes by, month two goes by, they don't get any deals, and they're like, oh, like crap, I'm
yeah,
spending so much money, and I'm scared I got to stop or scale back. But they like, they drop off and they're not consistent, and that's a huge roadblock for a lot of people. So how did you overcome that?
so a couple different things. I uh, joined up with a group, the Mike and Dan, those guys have a real estate investors group, and they really preach direct mail. And so I had a group of guys that do direct mail. And they're like, listen,
Yeah.
dude, it's going to be 90 days probably until you get your first deal. Just trust the process. And these are the numbers. And we had people all over the country that do direct mail that have very, very similar experiences and numbers in terms of what their cost per lead, cost per deal are. And they're like, you're not special. Kansas City isn't any
Yeah.
different than any of these other markets. Just you commit the money and stick with it. It's going to be
That's awesome.
uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
so we did it. And, lo and behold, we end up with pretty similar numbers to everybody else. So it was one of those, you just have to like know that the money's spent and commit to it and trust the process. And then you also, when you start getting those leads in, you have to know that, hey, that might be a $400, like it cost me $400 to make my phone call, answer it and treat that lead with the respect that it deserves, because it did potentially cost you $400 to make
Yeah.
that phone ring.
Right.
So
Absolutely. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge that you had a support system and somebody to fall back on and just help you with that mindset, because like I said, that is a huge issue that a lot of people cannot get past, and sometimes it prevents them from even getting started because they're already talking themselves out of it, that, this isn't going to work for me, and they think there is somebody special, and it really is just all about time, consistency, and just it's a numbers game.
mhm.
So that's awesome, man. That's great to hear. So, talk to us again a little bit about the your process. Like, do you target any specific lists? What is your process on pulling lists? How often? And then how do you get that into the mail, your mailing sequence, and kind of what's your cadence?
Sure. So, you know, I I send about 12,000 letters per month. And so you try to get it as targeted and as motivated as you can. We use PropStream for our data. And so I'll go and, get lien lists, get absentee owners, get, all the standard lists. I have to
Hmm.
go back and look. I've got pre-foreclosure list. I have a part-time VA that gets county data for me that PropStream isn't super accurate in my market.
Hmm.
Divorce data, things like that. So we'll pull that stuff out. She does it weekly, and I send out mail monthly. I'll update my big lists quarterly. So get all the smaller motivated lists, and then we'll get absentee owners, um, vacants, things like that. Put them into my CRM, and it has a list stacking feature. And basically, anything that has any property that's on two or more lists, we'll
Hmm.
export that, and then we'll send it over to you guys to mail to. And
Okay.
so from my list, typically we can get between 11,000 and 12,000 pieces out per month.
How big is your area? Because you're narrowing it down with people that are on more than two or more lists, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
probably starting with a much larger population set. So how big is your do you know how big your geography is in like population size or anything like that? Are you in multiple counties?
Yeah, so I started in just two counties in Kansas City, north of the river. So Kansas City's on both sides of the river, Kansas City,
Yeah.
Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri. I started in Platte County and Clay County. Those are, I know, to say more affluent suburby areas. Um, I didn't have the response rates that I get when I hit Jackson County, which is kind of the main chunk of the city. So really now I'm Jackson County, Clay County, Platte County, and then I have another small market north of me, St. Joseph, Missouri, that I also mail. But I really don't do much on the Kansas side, which again is probably 50% of the population in the KC metro. So I
Okay.
could expand that further if I wanted to and hit even more people with that same criteria. I haven't, because I'm a one-man band with the
Yeah.
exception of part-time VA and just trying to manage the lead flow.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a good sized farm area. And so you must be pulling many more records than 12,000, even to be marketing to 12,000 and to be able to
Mm-hmm.
manage that yourself. That's great. One interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about too is like take us through like your first call with somebody that called in off a mailer. Were you nervous about that, like handling that call? How did you, yeah, take us through the mindset and like how you got through that?
Well, the very first one I think was from a handwritten one, but my background, I was in sales and marketing for a beef company
Oh,
out here
okay.
in Kansas
Yeah.
City for 15 years. So I was a phone sales guy.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different in that, these people who reached out to you, it's a completely different industry, beef and real estate. But so I was pretty comfortable on the phone. I didn't mind that. It was once you get somebody committed or you get them under contract, that's where you actually have to, move the ball down the field. That's where it got a little less comfortable because I'd never been in that situation before, and just figuring out the next steps. But
Hmm.
yeah, they get on the phone. You just have to make sure, qualify, disqualify them, make sure that there's some motivation there, get the condition of the property, their motivations, why they called. You have a little bit of information on them that they probably don't know that they had a bankruptcy or something, but that may be their motivating factor. Um, so you get the condition of the property, their motivation, their timeline, are they looking to be out in 30 days, 60 days, 2 years? That gives you indication whether or not you need to press harder on this lead and then try to draw price out of them
Hmm.
if you can to see how realistic this lead is. And
Yeah.
price is never, you never want to kick a lead to the dead leads pile just because they want market price or above, because
Yeah.
typically they're going to start there. You do get the people that just tell you they want 50% of ARV, and it's a great lead, but most of them start high, and it's a negotiation. It's a couple month process before you get them through.
Yeah, I learned that lesson. I learned that lesson. I put a lead to like dead lead, and then I brought an acquisitions person in, and they called them back, and
Mhm.
they actually got them down to a price that we purchased it, and we made like 50 grand on it. And
Yeah.
and I was like, crap, I put that to like unqualified. Like that was like a dead lead because they wanted too much money. But after you heard more about the story and the reason they needed to sell and their motivating factors, just time and circumstance happened that they were like, all right, we now need to sell, and selling now is more important than price.
Mhm.
And they were able to adjust. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
And that's
Um,
another thing that I love about direct mail is it's we say sticky. Is I've gotten calls, so the first deal that I did in April of 23 from my direct mail, he called me off of the November mailer. That was the one that he
mhm.
kept. So he had it, you know, magneted to his refrigerator for 4 or 5 months. It was just a matter of him waiting until he was ready, probably when winter was over and it started to warm up here, and that's when he called me. So that
Yeah,
stuff stays out there, whereas a text message is going to get buried.
yeah,
Uh, and then again, people ask like, well, how long do you mail these people? Well, you just keep them on the list because they may recycle it and they don't have it anymore. Something happens that week and your mail hits, they're ready to sell, and
yeah.
then they'll call you then. So typically, don't take them off the list once you start mailing them. If it's in your budget, just continue to hit the same list and it'll continue to produce.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think that's so important. I always say that, and that's why I love direct mail, and I got started in direct mail right off the bat, is because it's the only marketing avenue that really has staying power, meaning just what you said, like they can hold on to that for months or years. And those are the calls, like first couple seconds you're on that call, and they're like, yeah, I got your mail piece a long time ago. You look it up, and you're like, oh my God, it's been like a year. Or like when I started sending to them, you immediately know like that's going to be a great deal. And usually
Mm-hmm.
those are like my best deals that I ever have done,
Yeah.
is when I market for them for so long, because like you said, time and circumstance changes. You want to make sure you never kick them off the list, because unless they sold that property or they specifically told you don't market to me, just keep them on your list, keep marketing to them, because time and circumstance will change their situation. So cool. We talked a little bit about your direct to seller marketing, kind of your setup and all that stuff. So how do you feel like it's impacted your business? Like, for instance, are you able to get properties more discounted? Are you able to find more properties? Like, has that done for you in your business?
I would say the biggest thing that it's allowed me to do is continue to build my business in a systematic fashion. With the texting piece, like I would have to sit down here and just call through. You had 200 active leads that you had to like sort through, try to get people on the phone. Again, it was turned into like a call center job. Here, I can control my lead flow with warmer leads coming in. I can run those appointments myself, and everything's a little bit more manageable. You can dial it up. It's easy to add a few more, you know, leads to your list, and you get a pretty predictable response rate, so you know whether or not you can manage that flow. If I were to hire an AC manager, I'd probably add another 5 to 7,000 pieces of mail per month, just because then we could handle that lead flow. But it allows you to dial in your lead flow a little bit. And I mean, it's a crazy business and you're always kind of on call, but it allows you to create some kind of predictability in the
Yeah.
business, at least from a lead flow standpoint.
Yep.
We call them, moon phases, where, you might go 2 months and really don't get any good leads. And then in a week, you get like six of them. And, that happens, but the lead flow is pretty consistent. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's been the main thing, is being able to have metrics that you can track and understand where your marketing spend needs to be to manage your time and lead flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tracking is a critical component that I think a lot of people don't do, because real estate's challenging for people starting, and even for like open letter marketing, for us to be a service provider. There's a lot of our customers, real estate investors, that they didn't go to school for real estate investing, right? They don't really understand marketing or sales or like, purchasing a home or negotiating. Like they don't have a lot of those skills. So you almost have to learn as you move along. So yeah, I think that's a really important part of what you just mentioned, is being able to do that sort of stuff. So I guess, can you take us through like one of your deals that you've done recently with direct to seller marketing? Kind of what, if you know what list it was on, What was their, situation, and if you're done with the property, like what the rehab and all that, the numbers are?
Sure. I've got, I mean, all my deals have come from direct mail. So, like a quick and easy one was similar to you. I was actually driving to an appointment. I get a text message, and it was a picture, and it had like the last 5 postcards that I'd sent out, and it just said, "I'm ready to sell now." So I called the guy,
That's
and
awesome.
he was actually like 5 minutes from the other appointment. I ran over there that day. We got a contract 2 days later, and I had it assigned 3 days after that. So, like from the time that he reached out to the time that we had to sign for a $20,000 fee was 4 days. So it was
That's
a pretty quick deal, and you get those, and like that's what direct mail can do for you because he'd been holding on to these things every month,
yeah,
and he
that's
sent me
amazing.
a picture of the whole collection of them.
That's incredible.
So
What was the situation that made him want to sell or need to sell?
he had inherited the house from his mom. He had lived there. He was retired and he was ready to move to Florida. You, you would be, maybe you wouldn't be surprised how many people in Kansas City in the wintertime just want to move to Florida. Like, say
Yeah.
20% of my leads, if they're over the age of 50, they want to sell and go somewhere where it's sunny. They're just tired of
Yes.
here.
So you're probably cyclical with us in that like fall and winter are probably like the best times we buy the most properties. Spring too, but summer like really cools off because most people are still up here. But winter they don't want to deal with like, snow or if the heating system is not working, and a lot of people like will move down south. So
Mhm.
those are always usually good seasons for us.
We get it more so, I'd say, the spring and the summer, and then it picks up as we get into winter. Like they want to get it done before winter. Once winter sets in, they don't want to be outside. They just stay in the house. But
Yeah.
this guy's house, it was in disrepair. The roof had to been 40 years old. It had some leaks in the foundation, so it just wasn't a sell on the MLS property. We
Yeah.
wanted to be done with it and move on, and so we were able to help him with that. But
Yeah.
another more interesting one was from a divorce list, and the lady had reached out to me. I think it was in February of last year, and she talked to me for probably 2 hours on the phone. And she said her name was Carol Baskin, and I thought this was a joke because people will call you and just mess with you, and she sounded kind of out there. And so I just listened to her and kind of wrote it off. Well, she called me back exactly 30 days later and said, "Hey, are you interested in my house?" So then I like have this, okay, she's either really has lots of spare time and really wants to mess with me, or she's motivated. And so ended up going to the house. It took us from we ended up buying the house in September of last year. Uh, got her out in October of last year and sold it in November. The house was like 95% done from an insurance claim. The upstairs bathtub had flooded, all sorts of things had
Oh,
happened. She went through a divorce. She fired her contractors. She thought her ex-husband had hired a hitman to kill her. Like
oh my
all sorts of
God.
things. Like it was a
That's
crazy thing.
insane.
But once everything, the dust settled, we came in and finished the rehab work. It took us, 21 days, put it on the market, and we made 28 grand on that deal. So, um,
Awesome, man.
great house, great neighborhood. So again, it's direct mail stuff. She'd held on to that one for a couple months as well before she called me.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Man, it's so interesting the situations that people are in because, you know, before I got into real estate, I'd be like, why would anybody want to sell for under market value? That just doesn't, I didn't understand it at all. And I thought that that was not a real thing
Mm-hmm.
until you start to talk to people and you're like, man, people are in some serious situations or scary situations, financial or health related issues that money is generally not the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's selling and getting out of that property. So
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely come across all sorts of interesting situations, especially with direct to seller marketing because you're going right to the actual seller.
Yeah.
So what's the plan for you? Any changes, updates for like the near future? I know we're kind of in an interesting economic state right now with
Yes.
kind of the new election coming on. So are you thinking about the future, making any adjustments? Will that affect anything that you're doing right now?
I don't think so. I'm going to stick with direct mail. A lot of the folks in the group that I'm in direct mail is their primary marketing channel, and then they'll layer on texting and cold calling. I think at this point, if I were to increase my marketing spend, I would just throw more into direct mail. I like
Yep.
it. I like the ability to dial it up, dial it back as you see fit. Um, and what happens, a lot of these like texting and cold calling, another reason that I got out of it and into direct mail is, you're relying on the carriers to deliver your text messages, not the postal carriers.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
just going to deliver your mail. It's the cell phone carriers can just shut off your text messaging, and if your entire marketing is built out on that, you have zero control over that. Your business could be like dead overnight if they decide just to shut off that type of marketing. And technically, it's really illegal unless you have opt-in. I know
Hmm.
there's people that find ways around it, but I'm just not super. I don't like that. I don't like getting the text messages myself. I don't like getting the cold calls myself, so I just don't. I don't do it. I would just
Hmm.
add more into the direct mail pile and go from there. So
Excellent. Awesome. And then last question I have for you, any suggestions or anything like that for either new investors or people that are just starting out with direct to seller marketing? Like any recommendations or suggestions that you can give them on, any missteps that you took that you feel like could streamline them or anything like that on mindset?
just commit to at least 90 days of marketing spend, ideally 6 months, and you have to have a sample size that makes sense. It's not 6 months of sending out 100 letters.
Yeah.
You probably need to be sending out a minimum of 2,000 a month. 3,000 is better. Um, and just from day one, consider that money spent. What you could do, and I don't know if you guys are set up this way. My very first marketing direct mail, I was with a different vendor, and the way they did is I paid, I think it was $10,000 or $12,000 day one, and then we split that out. So I had spent the money, and it was up to me to go in each month and send that mail, and so that helped me commit. I've since left that vendor just because you guys' process is way simpler. Um, the pieces work just as well. They're more economical, and like one thing you'll find when you get in and you start doing this is like having a process like yours for ordering mail and the communication and the turnaround time. You get return to senders, and if you're
Yep.
spending anywhere from 60 cents to $1 per piece to send it out, and it takes me 21 days from me ordering my mail to get it finalized from the vendor, then go out, I might have $500 worth of RTS that I'm waiting to get back to me that I will send two or three more times. That will tend to add up. With you
Yeah.
guys, I can go on, I can make my order within 24 hours. I've got my draft back, and usually that thing's going to go out. The first mailing is going to go out within 2 to 3 days of that. You
Yeah.
know, the turnaround time is incredible, and so it's why we've moved over to you and why we've stuck with you guys.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate that. Well, Wes, thank you so much again for joining the podcast. I really appreciate it and filling us in on yourself and your business.
Mhm.
If people want to get a hold of you, is there an easy way for them to kind of look you up or get in touch?
Yeah, I mean the socials. It's Wes Steimel, Steimel on Facebook, and then same on Instagram. I think it's all one long word, but Wessteimel on Instagram. Not super active, but you can message me there. Usually, if I show up, my wife has tagged me in one of our flips or something that we're doing around town. But yeah, for sure, reach out. I'd love to answer any questions anybody has.
Awesome, Wes. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You bet, Justin. Appreciate you having me.
Okay.